Superhero stories always involve a journey of self-discovery and saving people, right? They also always include a test, a battle, and most notably, an archenemy. Sometimes these archenemy relationships seem as if they can't ever let each other go. And just like your siblings, they can't live with them and they can't live without them.
You complete me.
But what if we told you that these super enemies didn't really hate each other? We've compiled a list of heroes and villains that can't seem to quit each other. Before we dive in, make sure you fly on over to that subscribe button and join our notification squad to keep up to date on all things superheroes and comic books. The Joker and Batman. We can't start a list about love and hate without the iconic comic book duo that loves to hate each other. Easily the most obvious choice for this list, Batman and the Joker have been at odds for decades now.
You just don't know when to quit, do you?
And it all comes back to pretty much one single belief. Neither could exist without the other. This is a relatively common trope that writers love to point out, and it's come to a head on multiple occasions over the years. We wonder why. This symbiotic relationship is a highlight of some of Batman's most important stories over the years, such as 1988's The Killing Joke. This comic book saw Batman coming to terms with the fact that he and Joker may be battling each other forever. But why can't they let each other go? The two are like oil and water. There's even 2012's Death in the Family, in which Joker implies Batman's reliance on family makes him too weak. Here, Batman even notices that Joker seems to have a hint of love in his eyes. We're guessing the hint of love was in both Bat's and Joker's eyes, because their track record definitely shows that they love each other.
Hey, Parker. My God, Eddie.
Venoms Bond with Spiderman. Another iconic symbiotic relationship, which is actually quite literally symbiotic, is Spider-Man and Venom. It's easy to forget the real reason why the original Venom and Spider-Man are rivals. For our friendly neighborhood Spidey, it's about stopping the violent, murderous rampage of the symbiote and its host, Eddie Brock. But for the symbiote, it's more of a spurned love affair. Well, you know the saying, hell hath no fury like a symbiote scorned, right? The symbiote views Peter as a host that abandoned it, and it feels rejected, ultimately wanting revenge. There have been a number of hosts for Venom since then. Mac Gargan, Flash Thompson, and recently Lee Price. But when Lee lost the symbiote, it made a bid to re-bond with Spider-Man. Having been cured of its insanity while under Flash Thompson's bond, the symbiote viewed Spidey as someone who could do good and wanted to reforge that bond, proving it still had a bit of affection for the wall-crawler. Unfortunately, Spidey rejected the symbiote again, leading it to bond with Eddie Brock once more and seemingly restoring the symbiote's insanity. We understand rejection can be pretty hard sometimes, but this little symbiote is taking it a bit too far, don't you think? For those of you who love ad-free viewing and free things, we're excited to announce the Premium Network. The Premium gets you early access to videos from CBR, The Gamer, Screen Rant, and many other great channels. Thousands of videos in one place with ad-free browsing. How sweet is that? Sign up for free The Premium by clicking the link to start binge-watching videos from your favorite channels. Mad about the Hulk. What's not to love about a super genius like Bruce Banner? Well, except for his temper that can sometimes get a bit out of hand.
That's nice. It's a nice sentiment.
The Hulk is also a fan favorite, especially in the MCU, but he means well and we still love him. But what about someone in the comic book world who loves him a bit too much? Philip Stearns was a genius scientist who was obsessed with Bruce Banner. This obsession especially amplified when Banner became the Hulk, and Stearns began replicating experiments to become just like Banner. The result was Madman, a psychotic bruiser with strength and intellect to rival the Hulk's. Suffering a psychological breakdown, Madman's personality was so terrifying that even his brother, Hulk Foe the Leader, came to Banner's aid against him. This culminated in a battle several years later in the pages of The Incredible Hulk, where Hulk and Madman found themselves slugging it off on top of the London Bridge. There, a felled Madman finally outright confessed his love for the Hulk in a moment of clarity. Hulk seemed to shrug it off, but didn't get much chance to respond as the bridge exploded. Madman wasn't seen again for several years, but eventually died as a result of actions taken by his brother.
Hello, Barry.
Reverse Flash wants Flash's adoration. Hailing from the 31st century, Eobard Thawne was a great scientist who went back in time to become the greatest villain in history. Under the moniker of Reverse Flash, Thawne menaced Barry Allen for years before Barry accidentally took him out. Though he felt the immediate ramifications of the act, Barry had no idea the long-term problems Thawne's death would cause. To be fair, how can you ever know the consequences? Unless, of course, you live in the comic book world and have time-traveling abilities, but that's a whole other topic for another time. In the updated origin in the classic Flash story, The Return of of Barry Allen, Thawne's original trip to the past was because he idolized Barry to the point that he had plastic surgery to resemble him. Okay, so we switched from most evil villain in history to super obsessed guy, and we aren't sure which is worse. Thawne's trip to the past went awry, and upon learning that he would die as Flash's greatest rival, the unstable Thawne tried to replace him. Wally West eventually tricked Thawne into returning to the 31st century. Although infatuated with Flash, he still harbored resentment for Barry, which resulted in him ultimately becoming Reverse Flash. Lex respects Superman. We have Batman and the Joker, inarguably the most iconic enemy duo that can't live without each other. But we can't forget another enemy duo from the same DC comic book world, Superman and Lex Luthor, of course. Before the New 52, we'd say that Lex Luthor and the Man of Steel had a pretty stable rivalry. They mutually disagreed and detested each other to some degree. Superman wanted people to be good, and Lex wanted Superman to be dead. Hey, it's fairly straightforward, right? However, among their different views, there was still an underlying tone of respect that was present. However, by the time of New 52, Luthor seemed to adopt a degree of love for his Kryptonian rival. Well, that escalated quickly. This is perhaps none more apparent than in the Rebirth era of Action Comics. Following the death of the New 52 Superman, Luthor took it upon himself to adopt that Superman's role in the universe, donning a suit of armor and going so far as to buy the Daily Planet to get his cape. Kinda sweet and endearing, but Luthor took affection to a new level by attempting to fill the void left by the Man of Steel. Well, sometimes you just gotta fill the empty void left in your heart.
Pathetic.
Emma Frost catches Cyclops' eye. As the White Queen of the infamous Hellfire Club, Emma Frost butted heads with the X-Men on numerous occasions. This, of course, included Scott Summers, the X-Men leader known as Cyclops, and his long-suffering lover Jean Grey. Uh-oh, a love triangle perhaps? Well, Emma offered psychic counseling to Scott, as a friend would do, but this turned into a little something more. And ultimately, the counsel turned into real love. Emma has never really been trusted by her fellow X-Men. Despite her close relationship with Cyclops and the countless times helping the team, she's always been regarded as duplicitous and villainous, perhaps with good cause. But why, you might be wondering? Well, Emma has always been secretive and primarily concerned with her own personal agenda. Secrets and selfishness don't always bode well in a team of crime fighters. Her love for Scott was even ultimately twisted as seen in the pages of Death of X, where she used her telepathic powers to make the world think that Scott was murdered at the hands of Black Bolt long after he'd succumbed to Mpox. Oh no, this is definitely not how you should handle a true love situation.
What do you want? Justice.
Daredevil and Typhoid Mary. You probably expected us to make a case for Elektra on this list, and you certainly could. Hey, we don't blame you. When we think of Daredevil, we also think of Elektra. But for the sake of mixing it up, we feel Typhoid Mary is the more interesting one to look at here. Mary's multiple personalities have confounded Daredevil on more than a few occasions, as they would anyone. But the subtle changes to her body chemistry and how she carries herself means Matt's radar sense can't tell if she's not a different person. The two have a strange relationship that culminates in them spending some romantic time together in the story Last Rites. But then Matt has Mary committed the next morning in an effort to save her. At least his heart was in the right place, but unfortunately, she eventually breaks out. She ends up having a stretch with the Merc with the Mouth himself, Deadpool, which leads to her remembering Matt and how he's the reason for her multiple personality disorder. He accidentally kicked her out of a window while investigating a questionable place she worked in. Since then, the two have been more rivals than lovers.
Wow, you're feisty.
Lex loved Supergirl. Lex can be a bit of a rocker, as we all know. After years of wearing a ring made of kryptonite, Luthor died when the radiation the ring emitted caused cancer to quickly spread throughout his body. Like with most things in our world, the kryptonite was considered to be safe, but it turns out they were wrong. But worry not, Luthor had a master plan, and it honestly got super creepy very fast. Faking his death, Luthor had a new body cloned around his brain. He presented himself as a 21-year-old son who was previously unknown, Lex Luthor II. Which technically isn't a lie since he is Lex Luthor 2.0. With long red hair and an Australian accent, Lex eventually found himself going after Supergirl. Having come from an alternate Earth, Supergirl was taken aback by his resemblance to the same Lex that had created her. Talk about drama. The two formed a strange relationship for a time, but Lex's body would eventually deteriorate to its proper age and, like most good things, his reign ended.
Well, I couldn't leave my best girl.
Diamondback renounced evil for Cap. Rachel Layton was a member of the Serpent Society, a band of snake-themed villains who came across many of Marvel's heroes. We can't help but wonder if Indiana Jones would stand a chance against them. But among these serpentine baddies and their encounters with heroes, the most notable of all these meetings was the living legend himself, Captain America. It was in these encounters that Layton would sway her allegiance, helping Cap before ultimately defecting. Giving up her villainous ways, she sided with Captain America on many occasions. Who could blame her? Cap is pretty awesome. We'd swear our allegiance to him any day, wouldn't you? Against Steve's better judgment, Rachel did eventually talk Steve into a date, and the two slowly entered into a relationship. It looks like the enemies actually turned the hate into love. Tumultuous as it may have been, Rachel was Cap's girlfriend for a large chunk of the 80s and 90s. Things eventually fell apart, with Diamondback towing the line yet again between hero and villain. She most recently joined a reformed Serpent Society, but betrayed them to help the then-current Captain America Sam Wilson. It seems her love-hate relationship with the Cap also extends to her love-hate relationship with villainy.
Why have you done this?
To prove to Father that I am a worthy son.
Loki and his adoptive family. Ah yes, you may all remember the intoxicating villain in the first Avengers film, right?
Earth's mightiest heroes type thing.
Yes, I've met them.
A fan favorite, Loki was a villain we actually kinda rooted for, but it's hard not to root for him when he's played by the charming Tom Hiddleston. Although it's more readily apparent in the MCU, over the years in the comics, Loki has proven to love his adoptive family considerably more than he lets on. We knew the tough evil exterior was just a facade. Loki's initial bitterness doesn't stem from hating his family necessarily. In reality, it has to do with his inability to claim Asgard's throne, which he views as his birthright. As such, the trickster god has feuded with his family on more than one occasion. This was likely the most obvious during the phase where Loki was resurrected as a child. Having been brought back with limited powers and only the faintest memories of his past deeds, this Loki was still a trickster but trying to be a good person. He and Thor demonstrated a mutual adoration for each other during this time, with Thor even justifying Loki's revival to Odin and the other Asgardians. Aw, brotherly love.
Gotta say, that's awesome.
Well, there you have it. Those are some villains who actually love their rival superhero counterparts. So what did you think? Are there any rival duos we missed? Let us know in the comments below. While you're here, don't forget to check out our playlist for more awesome videos. If you enjoyed our video, please like and share. Thanks for watching.